It's been said before, and I'll say it again. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. So where would you rather be than right here and right now on the Ralph Rant? Let's go.
Welcome to the Ralph Rant, your source for hard-hitting Buffalo Bills takes. Now, here's your host of the Ralph Rant, that veteran watcher of generations of Bills teams, the prophet who predicted Josh Allen's greatness, that opinionated so-and-so you've walked out on parties because of, the Ralph.
Check 1, 2. Now, that's going. Check 1, 2. Perhaps we have audio now. I see the little green lights. My goodness, I'm so sorry it took me 11 minutes to figure that out. I don't know what happened there, and it's supposed to be getting it from OBS. And if I change it over to OBS once again, gone. Check. No, now it is still there. Now my voice should hopefully be lining up with my face because we do have a video latency situation. So here I've been gabbing this whole time, and the comments have built up. And of course, I'm saying the comments built up because I was not reading this. And boy, look at how far we went there with all those comments. Just let me know that it's good now. I believe it is. I do see lights. Okay. So anyway, I'm going to get back to the start of it here. And hopefully you sipped your beers for a little bit there while we were working through that. Of course, I could hear myself just fine. And I'm just like going along, reveling in the luscious tones here. But unfortunately, you got nothing. And I was starting off by talking about the weather. And I'll repeat that. It doesn't not seem as if it's going to be a snow globe situation, but there is a chance of snow after 3 a.m. in Foxborough, cloudy with a low around 25, southwest wind 5, becoming calm in the evening, 70% chance of precipitation. Then Sunday morning, also snow. They're saying up until about 9 a.m. and then mostly cloudy with a high near 30. So it looks like the snow might hold off or be gone, as it were, for the actual game. And they have taken off, though, the note of gusts, northwest wind 5 to 8 miles per hour at Gillette Stadium for the ball game. So, yes, I'm officially ranting now about the audio situation. I mean, this is, of course, it was fine. That was just a glitch. I just had to change and go back to something else. But enough of that problem. The weather looks like it's going to be largely the same as what we saw, except for the magic snow globe effect, which the Patriots won't get because, well, they're not magic. And we know the Buffalo Bills are. We saw so last week. But one of the things I'm going to get into here before we jump into your comments and I get past all the ones that we're talking about our audio problems are going is the injury reports, actually. And we can talk about the Bills injuries first, and then I'm going to get into some interesting points about the Patriots side. In terms of the Bills, they are indicating no one is out. Of course, Ed Oliver is IR, so he wouldn't be being called out. And this is actually the healthiest the Bills have been in a while in terms of no one being out. No one is doubtful. I don't even know if doubtful is a designation anymore. I think they got rid of that. It's just questionable or and I don't even think probable is one either. That got to be too nitpicking between the different levels of injury. Of course, we need to talk. We'll talk first about Christian Benford, who injured his toe sometime during practice on Thursday and was seen in a short surgical walking boot, which mainly is, it sounds worse than it is. It's basically a surgical sandal that prevents any pressure on the toes. And of course, it's a toe that is involved. We can assume a big toe perhaps, but there was video from the practice facility today, Friday, that showed he was walking around in a normal shoe, seemed to be walking fine, perhaps favoring a slight bit, probably has some pain going on. We know how those things can go. He still has another couple of days to get there for it. I think Christian Benford is going to be fine for this game. I think what we heard at first, because it was a practice injury and it just happened, was just a matter of the Bills being extra cautious. We continue here. Terrell Bernard was limited with that elbow, and he's just about at the time to be finished with that. That was not a hyperextended elbow. We have learned since it was a dislocated elbow. And then Josh Palmer also, who had the high ankle sprain that occurred versus the Falcons, I believe. And he was out for 3 games, tried to come back for one, had a bit of a setback, is sat out for another 2. It's looking like that's possible this weekend to have him. Although I think we're going to be concentrating a lot on tight ends and backs because there's a good couple of corners on the Patriots side. And then there's no status given for the following, which means they were full participants. Cole Bishop, who had just a calf cramp issue that was probably a bit sore during the week, but he looks good to go. Joey Bosa was a full participant in practice, and he looks good to go also. Fortunately, that week-to-week ended up being on the shorter end of things. Spencer Brown, according to Dr. Kyle Trimble of Banged Up Bills, may have a torn labrum. That would be something that would have to be dealt with in the offseason. He is braced, though, and he was a full participant in practice. He looks ready to go. Dawson Knox had a personal situation, but he was a full participant on Friday, so he's good there. Mitch Trubisky with an illness, but he ended up being a full participant on Friday. And Dalton Kincaid seems to be fine. He'll probably be wearing that sleeve or some manner of brace perhaps on that knee, but seems no worse for the wear, having gone through that game last weekend. Benford, of course, is the headline of the injury situation. Bernard and Palmer, according to McDermott, even on Wednesday, were trending in the right direction. And I think we kind of heard that today also on his visit with Sal Capaccio on WGR this morning. So actually, the Bills are quietly one of the healthier contending teams, actually, this weekend. And Bosa, Bosa could be huge because, and we'll talk more about this as we get into it, but Drake May has time to throw, and some of his turnover-worthy throws, he could be had. And I'm going to stress on the point I made in the video last night that I think the kind of competition the Patriots have been playing, based on just how it arranged, based on them having a last place schedule, and just essentially how the teams fell in this stretch of games that started with Carolina, and they beat the Bills, and then they've won 8 straight since then also. So I think the pass rush is going to be an important bit of business, and we'll see how that works out. Now is it back in? Good Lord. No, that one was on me. That one was on me. Guys, I'm so sorry. I'm losing it tonight. I don't know why this is, that was a dumb mistake. So pardon me. But I've been hitting a lot of your comments and bringing them up here. This is an easy way to make the show 2 hours long by rereading comments over and over. I think the problem is that even when it goes off, I still hear myself. I'm going to have to do some things in checking that. Well, let's get past that one. Must have a loose wire in your mic. No, lost sound again. Sigh. I mean, you can tell me the last thing you heard so I can go back and do it. Feeling good about us beating the Patriots. They only won by a field goal in the previous game, and we had 3 turnovers, and we're wearing those shitty uniforms. Let's effing go, Buffalo. Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And Drake May can be had were the last words. And I think I hit the cough button and then just left the cough button on, essentially. That's the first lesson in radio. But if I missed your comments, apologize for that. We're going to keep just blasting through here, and I'm not going to touch that cough button again. And it makes you think I've got a gear problem, but not at all. Just 2 completely unrelated issues. Oh, my goodness. Going on 5 minutes, no sound. No sound. See, I have to keep up with the comments here. Yeah, no, nothing's going on with the mic. That was my mistake. It was a glitch the first time, and the second time, it was me. Boy, how long does this go? Going on 10 minutes now. Ralph, can't hear you again. See, I got to keep up with the comments. I'm going to take Ralph's microphone and whip it into Lake Erie. No, that's not the issue. I'm assuming you're hearing me just fine. Turnover-free game is all the Bills need. Bets on how long the Ralph rambles with no sound. Still here. No sound, bro. Do I have any indication that it's actually back? 15 minutes, no sound. This is new. Stream frozen too. Nope. Back again now. There it is. Unbelievable. All right. Well, to recycle some of your questions and comments, I'm not touching the cough button again. Well, this doesn't do much. Well, I guess maybe if you can't hear me, it helps keep people on because they're not hearing any of the ridiculous things I might be saying. Back on. Daffy uniforms belong in a dumpster in Lackawanna. Indeed. Let's get to this next one here. Didn't hear starting at first one. All right. Well, unfortunately, I'm going to go back through some of what I was talking about. We got the injury stuff in, and let's move to a couple of different subjects here, and then we can recycle to some of the stuff you guys are bringing up. I apologize for this. I've been doing this long enough where there should not be audio issues. And I think we even heard a dog in the background now. So let's gird our loins and get back to it. But let's talk about some of the Bills' rooting interests this weekend and who we want to win in certain games. And I've got basically 7 games here that pertain to the Bills. There actually is one more that you could say sort of does, but we'll stick with these. Well, actually, I did include that one. That was probably Browns and Bears. But starting off with Ravens at Bengals. And if you're watching all the games, who do you want to have win in these games? And for Ravens and Bengals, my point is root for the Ravens. A win keeps them a game ahead of Kansas City in the seeding, and the Bills already own the head-to-head advantage. And of course, they do, the Ravens, that is, have the disadvantage with having lost head-to-head to Kansas City, but as long as their record remains tied, that's closer and helps Kansas City stay down. And then next we've got Cardinals at Texans. Certainly want to root for the Cards here. You need to keep the Texans below the Bills in the seeding, although a Texans win does do something to help keep Kansas City out. So you're kind of balancing those two items. And next we've got the Browns at the Bears. What are we thinking? Let the Browns win so they're not so hungry next week when the Bills go there for their second road game in a row, or let's hope they really suck and will continue to suck when Buffalo gets there. Then we've got Chargers at Chiefs. Obviously, the Chargers, even though a loss elevates the Bills with a win over New England, if the Bills beat New England, in other words, and the Chargers were to lose, that would have Buffalo essentially flip-flop, at least with the Chargers getting back to the 5 seed from the 6. But on the other hand, wouldn't you rather just see the Chiefs get eliminated to have that off the plate? The Chargers don't scare me that much in terms of team energies, nearly as much as the Chiefs. And that's just based on history and perhaps nothing to do with what's going on now. And then next, the Jets at the Jaguars. Go Jets. Jags can take a loss and still remain ahead of Kansas City because they do have a tiebreaker. And then we've got Packers at Broncos, which is that's a hell of a game, actually. And if the Bills if the Bills win and the Packers win, the Bills will just be one game off of the number 1 seed pace. And I think it's interesting that there still is a path for the Bills to be the number 1 seed. A lot of it has to do with the Miami Dolphins, and then the rest of it has to do with how the Broncos play. Because if the Bills beat the Patriots and the Dolphins are able to beat the Patriots, also the Dolphins have been playing very well, it would not surprise me. Then we've got a different situation going on in the playoff seeding. And then finally, we're talking Dolphins at Steelers. Now, a Steelers win means they're closer to taking the AFC North, and the Bills don't fear that trip if they're going to Acrisure and the Steelers to play. Of course, though, we want to see Miami look good because we'll need them to beat New England if we want the division and ultimately the number 1 seed. So that's your rooting interest for the weekend. And I'll have to say right now, in terms of being silent, but not to emphasize that point, Taylor Salty, my daughter, who is a theater major and an actress, has her directing debut. And it's actually a program that's starting Sunday at 4 p.m. Yes, theater people, not her, but theater people in general, do not respect the NFL. My God, last season, they actually had a play starting within minutes of the kickoff of the Super Bowl. They actually did make an adjustment to that to get it earlier in the afternoon. So my watching of Bills Patriots is going to be interesting. I'll be able to probably catch the first half at home, and then I will be with device as I can get the game via the Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV on a device, and we'll be watching on the drive down to Midtown Detroit. And then perhaps if the Bills run it down their throats all day and there's no penalties, the game will end early and I'll know the result. I'm going to have to do like I did in one of those commercials where the guy's at the wedding and it's very solemn, and then all of a sudden he starts screaming out Yahoo because he's watching his team on his iPhone. So if it goes past 4, I don't know how that's going to work. I know it's tough for my daughter also, and she's only doing like 1/3 of this 2-hour program they're doing from 4 to 6. So she might even be able to watch also. But nonetheless, I'm going to be scheduling the post-game show for the Bills Patriots at probably around 7 o'clock, somewhere in that area. It might be sooner. Just as soon as I get back to the studio, I'll have everything set to go, and there will not be audio problems like there were tonight. So you can count on a post game, but it will not be immediately following the game based on my commitments on Sunday. And I know we'll be all watching together at the same time. Donald Ohina. I need to get that right. Dude, start reading. I was really good at that once. Would love to see the Chiefs eliminated. Yes, indeed. Let's get some of these questions answered. And, if they want to put an asterisk that, okay, well, the Bills went to the Super Bowl and won, but didn't meet the Chiefs. You know what? Take that asterisk and, smoke a fatty and put it out on the asterisk. You need something to put it out on. I hate the Chargers, so boring to watch. Bomber Jack, I'll tell you what, the business of Justin Herbert being this next great thing, I just don't see it. And then how much did we hear about Jim Harbaugh early on in the season? I mean, Colin Cowherd was just like greasing him up and handing him flowers. Everywhere he goes, he's great and so forth. And hey, this is the NFL, and I, just don't think that Herbert is the great that they call him. He can throw well, and if they can have their defense playing well, though, and I don't know, we have like this reputation and expectation thing that for some of us that we kind of fear the Chiefs and want them out of there. I don't know if that exists so much with the Chargers. And of course, they also, the Chiefs have division games coming up. They still must play the Chargers and the Broncos, and they may also have the Raiders. I want the Steelers to win the division, and that's looking more possible here because you've got Ravens and Bengals sort of like cannibalizing one another a bit from the occurrence last week where the Bills were over the Bengals and the Steelers beat the Ravens. That's a good possibility, but I have no worry about traveling to Pittsburgh in the playoffs if that's what it comes to. I think the only place we actually would have a worry about is in not so much, well, because of their defense, but also because of the fact that Houston has just been a place the Bills haven't won since before my daughter was born. We're talking 2003 or something. So it's been quite the time there. But if the Bills can win out, they will stay ahead of the Texans in any event because there's still a game up on them. So let's hope that occurs. The Texans are 8-5. The Bills are 9-4. And again, the Bills have every opportunity to win it. I think they're going to win this game. I think they do beat Cleveland, and I think certainly that playing the Philadelphia, I don't think Philadelphia is the same team right now. And of course, the Bills have a bit of a score to settle with Philadelphia from that loss that they had previously. And quite frankly, the last time Philadelphia was in Buffalo, Philly beat the hell out of Buffalo. And, they're also still a Super Bowl champion. Bills get number 1 seed, according to Mr. Dominic Orsini, if they win out and Dolphins or Jets beat Pats and Denver loses 2 games. And that could be, that's a tall order, but it sure makes watching it all a lot of fun. So we'll see if that possibly is the case. Pat's execution will be key. They had an extra week to prepare. Yeah, they are coming off of their bye. Um, I'm glad the Bills aren't. The Bills sometimes are a little bit lethargic coming out of the bye. I think the Bills right now are in playoff mode, and I think this is going to be a different situation than the Patriots have faced. Like I talked about in the show last night, and if I could just bring it up here. I mean, if we look at the Patriots and who they have played, and I talked about their win streak being fragile, aside from the Bills in game 2 of their 10-game win streak, the Patriots have played Carolina, which of course we talked about Carolina having improved, but that was early on. That was game 4 of the season. And then New Orleans, and they've been game recently also. Tennessee, Cleveland, the Jets, the Giants, and the Burrowless Bengals. So as far as I'm concerned with that, I just don't see the Patriots having played the kind of competition that the Bills have offered. And the only other playoff team that the Patriots played during that streak is the Buccaneers. And of course, the Buccaneers have sort of fallen off the face of the earth. I don't know if anybody managed to catch Todd Bowles' presser after the game last night, in which the Falcons, with Kirk Cousins of all things, who was throwing the ball really, really well, came back and actually beat the Buccaneers. They were able to convert a 3rd and 28 to get the 4th and 14, and then hit the 4th and 14, and then there was an interception. And I've got a phone here that's dinging over and over again. We went from not enough sound to too much sound, but it's not within my reach, and I'm not going to worry about it if you're not. So, but I believe the Patriots and the Bills are slightly different teams now than they were before. Diggs has even fallen off a little bit in his performance. Last 4 games, he has not been putting up the numbers he had been. They've moved him more into the slot. And, of course, this is going to be in the cold. And I don't think Diggs has been particularly great in the cold. I mean, one of the last plays we saw him play for the Bills in the cold was when he had a ball right here from Josh Allen when the Bills were trying to actually win that game against Kansas City and ended up having to try a kick, which Tyler Bass missed, and the Bills ended up reliving a sort of a Scott Norwood moment. But let's keep on going with the comments here. If you guys are new in, we're going to keep on pressing ahead here because we did have a couple of audio problems due to the first was a software glitch. The second one completely unrelated to ignoring the fact that a cough button was depressed. And I rambled on for another 10 minutes because I let the comments get way ahead. Again, apologies for that. Mr. Paul Chandler indicates, I don't see us winning the division. We can just put it off for a few weeks. We just need to win so we can get it against us. But then they have it, and we got to take the show on the road. That's all. And, that could be how it works out. You might end up returning to the Patriots for a title game, even if that's the case. So we'll have to see. But the possibilities do exist for the Bills to at least win the division. Getting the number 1 seed is slightly farther fetched with Denver losing some football games. But the thing to remember is that I mentioned this in the show last night is the fact that, look, both the Patriots and the Broncos have long winning streaks going. And the pressure of those winning streaks can build up. Sometimes teams are actually better off getting a loss sort of out of their system because otherwise this pressure builds up and up and up when the team continues winning. So we'll have to see how that actually works out. But I think that Detroit, Denver could certainly look at losing a couple of games possibly, there'd be crazier things than the Bills to end up with the number one seed than this situation. It's absolutely possible. Black Cloud, I think the Cleveland game they'll take too lightly, how they did the Dolphins. Not how they'll get blown out, how the Dolphins did us, but Sanders at quarterback can put up points now. Our defense is better. Yeah, I think so. And quite frankly, if you look at sort of the historical things, the Bills have sometimes had some tight games at Cleveland, and that's a good defense, coordinated by Jim Schwartz, who was the Bills' defensive coordinator for a time and was very good at it when he was here. But I kind of think the Bills are sort of in their December mode now, and I would feel differently about that Cleveland game if it were perhaps middle of October in sort of the Bills' lull season. But and Black Cloud again saying don't sleep on Sanders. So it's tough to beat the same team twice. Woke's joke is here with us. Bills win. If our secondary shows up and Cooks can hold on to the ball. May has over 200 yards passing in every game. Well, frankly, their run game has not been as productive, and they are throwing more. And you've seen a little bit less of Ramondre Stevenson and a little bit more of Henderson. Travion Henderson, their draft pick running back, who's a good talent, but my answer to that is just like Jason Bush's, playoff Allen, watch out. Yes, and I think this Bills team is in a sort of a state of mind now that's a bit different. Again, when we're talking about my hive mind ideas on the Bills and how they've gone through and actually tested their failure modes throughout the season, a lot in losses, but even in wins also, and get an understanding what it feels like as the team mind being in these different situations. And you actually see the changes happen during the games. This is not stuff that occurs during the week. It's just like when a band gets on stage, it's the very same thing. It's different. And when that team gets out on the field, it is different. And I think you see the team actually learning as it goes. And at this point, I think we've gotten a lot of that accomplished, and something in that team's hive mind has got to be saying, as it is in mine, that, okay, Drake May, Stephon Diggs, Mac Hollins, Hunter Henry, dudes, that's not Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Mike Gesicki. It is not. It's just not. And I think the Bills are not fearing that situation. And, and last time they really didn't either. They held them to 23 points. Again, they held the Patriots to 23, and that's with giving up the ball 3 times. So we have to keep that in mind, and especially how close that game was and how close the Houston game was, and to competition that was probably considered more close to the Bills in those cases. I mean, quite frankly, the loss to the Dolphins was surprising because the Dolphins have been kind of sucking, but as it turns out, the Dolphins are kind of coming around a little bit, and they probably don't have much of a shot at the playoffs, but they could very well help the Bills when they go visit the Patriots in a couple of weeks here. Patriots' win streak has been weak besides Buffalo. Bills have the experience. Yes, they do. That was again, one of my 10 reasons that I can go over those again here. And I had just a little point actually that I had come up with earlier. Yeah, I just got that in. May, Diggs, and Hollins is not Burrow, Chase, and Higgins, leaving actually Mike Gesicki and Hunter Henry out of it in the way I wrote the statement. And then I don't think snow is really going to be an issue in this game, but the snow and the cold weather experience, I think, definitely helps the Bills. And the Bills are playing all of these last 5 games in cold weather. So it's going to be I think we're going to see some interesting things from the Bills on Sunday. If we lose, are we out? No, not at all. The Bills essentially to get into the playoffs, just in a general sense, 11-6 would do it. And they've got 4 games remaining, which means you need to go 2-2 in those games. And you would, on the outside, hope, but you don't want to have to be in a position to where you need to beat both Cleveland and the Jets. But fortunately, that Cleveland game is next week. They're playing the Patriots here now. I think the Bills are going to be up for this ball game. If they win the next 2 games, essentially beating the Patriots and the Browns, and they get themselves to 11-4, they're going to be in pretty good shape right then. I think you've got a playoff berth, maybe even clinched at that point, at least a 7th seed. But this has been a crazy NFL season with the way the competition has been, with really no supremely elite teams really in the entire league. If you look at it, everybody's got very visible warts, but I think it's a matter of who, gets the compound W on those warts and starts wearing them down a little bit and basically starts to peak at the right time, which I think the Bills have here. Basically, it's December, and as I spoke of last night in that video, I believe the Bills are like, I have it right here actually in what their December record is. Yes, in the Josh Allen era, this is from 2018. In the Josh Allen era, the Bills are 26-9 in regular season games that are in December or January. Basically, the rest of the regular season, whenever it starts in December, and then throughout the entire rest of the season. Now, of those 9 losses, 7 of those occurred in Josh Allen's first 2 seasons. Now, one of those 7 was actually, I believe, to the Jets. And then there was another loss to the Patriots that, of course, was just a season ago. Not this last season, but the previous, I believe, where the Patriots played themselves out of the number 1 draft pick, I believe. And in that case, the Bills were resting starters. So we had 2 of those games where the Bills were resting starters. So the Bills, basically since 2020, are very, very difficult out in December or January in the regular season. So that's to be considered. And it is a different thing. And the teams do develop as they go on. They're not a static quantity. Some teams regress. I mean, we watched the Buccaneers last night, and if that wasn't a perfect example of a team regressing, I don't know what is. Daniel Thompson has a dog that smells like rotten meat, bro. Okay. Only Christmas gift Benji needs is a Bills wind. Bills wind. Bills win. Wind would be stinky. Bills win would be great. Do you think if the Bills never had Josh Allen and were a bad team the last 8 years, would they be getting a new stadium? Well, I think there would have been pressure from the NFL anyway on a new facility. But we don't know that because the Bills do have Josh Allen. And I think one of the things you certainly have to say is that Terry Pegula, in his desires for the stadium, which, by the way, he's paying 53% of, at last count, with a $2.26 billion total price tag. But the fact that it is going to be outdoors was important to him. But, of course, we also saw the wind. And when people talk about snow and snow games, the snow has never really been a problem. It's the wind in winter that gets to be the difficulty. And if they were going to get a new stadium and have it an outdoor venue, which I'm very glad they did, they built it right because you're not going to have much wind, if any wind at all, down in that field level. That let's see, the difference in grade is about 160 feet from the very top of the canopy down to the field. And the field itself, and we always talk about the Ralph. Well, the Ralph's just dug out as a hole in the ground. The field is 50 feet below the grade, below the parking lots, 50 feet down to the actual field level. Well, this just in, the new stadium, its field is 35 feet below grade, below essentially the parking lot level. But the stadium is built much taller. It's far less fanned out like the Ralph and far more stacked with very steep upper decks. I mean, they're steeper by 6 degrees than we currently have at the Ralph. And that puts the furthest seat, the highest and furthest away seat in the new stadium is actually 41 feet closer to the field than the highest, furthest seat in the upper deck in the existing stadium. That gives you an idea of how they've kind of compressed it and made it taller rather than wider. And if you've got to look inside there, the last couple of vids that they put out, the underside of those canopies is basically corrugated. It's maybe some alloy. Perhaps it's even just stainless because it's the main structural component of the canopy surface itself upon which everything else is built. But that stainless surface or whatever it is, that's exposed to the crowd. And voices are going to be bouncing off that down into the field. It's like a musical instrument, essentially. So it's going to be loud. Plus, they've got, like 96 tons of speakers suspended from that canopy, 32 emplacements, 3 tons apiece. They're huge. They consist of like 5 or 6 speakers each, the same number of woofers, and since they're pointed down, it's going to be loud in there. It's really going to be loud. You're going to be able to hear the refs make their calls. We were trying to make out what the hell the refs were saying in the existing stadium last Sunday. Can't tell. And that's a good thing they're still using hand signals. Imagine if we still had Jim Schwartz. Yeah, interesting question. Interesting question. Yeah, he also he had a great defensive line here. Imagine if we still had Michael Hoyt, or imagine when we get Ed Oliver back. So I could say the same things, but Schwartz is definitely a good DC, and he had a stint as the head coach of the Lions for a while. That did not work out, but he has maintained his status as, he's up there with Vic Fangio as far as, these long in the tooth defensive coaches that have remained coordinators in the league. Black Cloud here. Speaking of Burrow, now that he's come out and have his level OG being happy speech, maybe the Bills could snag Jamar Chase from the Bengals if Burrow leaves. Not Higgins. He's still concussed. Yeah, he was. He was having trouble there in the game last week. That's strange with Burrow. I don't know if Burrow is going through it. I mean, he's the one that kind of insisted that they sign those guys, and then he just hasn't been present. I mean, we're basically starting to look at his career, and what's that word they use in the Christmas special we all know and love? Ralphie and the glasses, A Christmas Story. And that's when his father gets the box and reads it, and it says, Fragile. Must be from Italy. Well, Joe Burrow is fragile for sure. And that's been a tough thing for any team to deal with. If you're going to take a number 1 pick like that, it's going to end up being that sort of a problem. But it continues to be. Yeah, the Bills let the first game slip away. If they don't play sloppy and turn it over 3 times, they win that game by 2 possessions. Yeah, I believe that. I actually believe that. Um, it's kind of funny that it was like trading points for turnovers. Patriots won by 3, and the Bills gave them the ball 3 times. And you have to keep that sort of same thing in mind even with the Houston game where Houston wins by 4. Josh Allen gets sacked 8 times, and they are within a whisker of actually winning that game at the end anyway. So it just, makes you think it's not as if they had all those turnovers and then just got pounded. The only time they've lost by double digits was, of course, down to Miami. And Miami was probably going to be a horror show that happened at some time. With the Bills' success down there, there's always some kind of a break that happens to change that. But and listen, it's worth saying, it goes without saying that the Bills lost, what was it, 30-13, I believe, in that game. Well, the Bills visited Miami in September of 1990 with Jim Kelly at quarterback. Second game of the season, I believe. And the Bills were down there. I was at the game. The Bills got their clocks cleaned 30-7 in that game. And of course, went on to appear in Super Bowl 25 at the end of that season. So those losses can kind of happen. And so you could call it rationalization perhaps, but I'm not so down on the Bills for the losses that they actually have taken this season. You can explain away some of it. And again, the losses to the 2 best teams, if you will, that have gotten close to them, the Patriots and then the Texans, those were by 3 and 4 points respectively. We can't really afford to lose to the Browns or the Jets. We need to win out, and the Jets and the Finns could do us a favor. And I think the Finns could. I think the Dolphins can go and beat the Patriots. And it always sort of happens is when and it's kind of meaningless, but it's the psychology of it anyway. When a team beats certain teams and you get the idea that, oh, we're great because we beat those teams. And a good example of it early in the season was, oh, Baltimore's a Super Bowl, definitely a favorite. And Buffalo's down 15 to them with 4 minutes left or whatever, and then comes back and wins the game. And you're immediately like, oh, that's amazing. I think the title of my post game was, one for the ages. It was amazing, unbelievable. And we all thought the Bills were great. And they still may be, but the sense that then as we went along in the season, that Baltimore was not as good and started losing some games, and it takes the luster off some of those wins. And I think maybe, for example, at this point with the Patriots looking at their win streak, and if you look at it collectively like we did earlier with the teams that they've beaten, maybe some of the luster is off that. And, perhaps now you've got a team that's actually a true contender that's coming into your place. And I believe the Bills are that. Schlags is here. The Eagles game is looking more and more winnable too. Yeah, absolutely. And they're in trouble. They've lost 3 in a row. They lost to Dallas when Dallas came back from 21 to nothing to beat them 24-21, right? And then on Black Friday, Chicago beat them. And then I think then they just then lost to the Chargers, wasn't it, here just the other night? If I have that correct. I have to get that in front of me here. Let me pull up make sure and see what those scores were. CBS Sports. NFL and all scores here. Oh, that was I'm thinking of last week actually. Let me get to those. Yeah, the Eagles losing to the Chargers, and that was on the Sunday night, I believe. And then of course we had that debacle last night where if you haven't seen it, go catch Todd Bowles. He dropped F-bombs. Just, I mean, the ground was littered with craters and collateral damage. I mean, he went off on his team last night in his post game. But certainly Eagles looking very, very winnable. I think Henderson from the Pats is out, really. I had not heard that. You're speaking of Travion Henderson, and let's get actually a look here and see if there's an injury designation. There, I hadn't not. Travion Henderson, what's there any news here? I don't see anything on Henderson. If you've got a report, though, that would be interesting because they've been running him a lot more than they've been running Ramondre Stevenson. I've been to AT&T Stadium. While the stadium itself is nothing I'd want in Buffalo, they have a sweet hotel within walking distance. Why Buffalo? Never thought of that, especially with our fandom. Who needs a hotel when you've got the camper lot? I mean, listen, the Bills situation there, and it remains the same now. I mean, the Big Tree Inn is still there on the corner. The Gorilla Garage. I mean, there's never been that much development. And in fact, when when the original stadium was constructed in Orchard Park, when that site was selected, the one of the big reasons, other than perhaps sort of the ease of construction, perhaps, but for putting it in the ground rather than, building it up, was the fact that they wanted this. They didn't want the skyline interrupted of Orchard Park, and it hasn't been since. Because if you were driving to that stadium, for example, from the north, and even on I-90 before you get off on the 219, or I think it's after the 219 exit, but you can see the top of that new stadium, and everything else is trees. It's like an alien craft has landed in the middle of the forest. And then when you're heading down 219, after you get off 90, if you're going to the stadium, and that would put you a little bit east of the stadium and approaching it from the north, again, you get up on a rise on 219, and there's nothing else around there. So it's going to remain like that. It's going to be college town. It's going to be that tailgating situation. And, of course, a lot of the parking situation is interrupted now because the new stadium on the other side of Abbott, that not the stadium itself, but I think a portion of it, but then a little bit south of there, that's where the camper lot was on that side of Abbott Road. And that's, been a little bit of a difficult thing over the past few years since the stadium construction started, and will continue to be into even after next season because they will be dismantling the Ralph and making that back into the parking area. And I'm sure they'll have some sort of monument there indicating where center field was, though. Sorry, that message is confusing. My phone autocorrects, and I rarely proof check and read my message before hitting send all the time, And listen, I use ChatGPT a lot, right? I'll get some images and stuff created, certain things that I do, certain things for my work that I do, and its voice-to-text engine is excellent. Gemini, the Google AI version, is not as good. It wants to put a question mark after every fourth or fifth word. Anytime you say a word that starts with WH, it's looking to stick a question mark in as quick as it can. But both of those are great in comparison to the iPhone. And the autocorrection on iPhone, which is especially maddening to me, is sometimes you'll be doing voice to text and it gets the word right, and then it decides to change it after it's had it right for a second, which drives me up the wall. And frankly, I will often apologize to those that I've been texting to if there has been typos, and I'll often use a couple of choice expletives that are probably hanging somewhere in the cloud cover over this part of Michigan still. Uh, but amazingly, the phone doesn't have any problem spelling the expletives. It gets them all very perfect, especially words that start with, mother and other such things where you're talking about a good number of letters, 15, 16 letters, perhaps run-on sentences that are using the F word as sort of a connector phrase from item to item, and it gets it all perfect. So I don't know about that. What's going on there? We're continuing here. If our defense gets on board, we could go on a nice run this time around the time to get it going, but I'm not satisfied with anything less than a ring. Well, certainly we want that. And I think the thing is that, before our eyes, the defense kind of has gotten going. We've played 3 games now with second half defensive performances that have been nothing short of outstanding. And my theory on this, and maybe I even mentioned it earlier and during the audio blackout that we were living through, one of the two, is the fact that McDermott seems to be really good at adjusting. I made this one of my points in the video last night. McDermott is adjusting really well, and he's doing it in the second half. But the thing that seems remarkable to me is that it's almost as if he's pulling off a Muhammad Ali style rope-a-dope, because it's not that he's letting the opposing offense go out there and run their stuff in the first series and then try to shut it down. I think there's a little more gamesmanship going on here where he actually lets offenses go out, and I don't want to use the word allows. That's really the wrong word. But I suppose in some way, shape, or form, allowing the opposing offense to not only seemingly be able to execute their game plan, but also allowing them to sort of continue with it and get even comfortable with it and get into a state of mind, oh, well, this is going to work out well. What we suspected about the Bills' offense, or defense rather, was correct. But then in the second half, he's dropping the hammer on them, and effectively so. And he's done it 3 games in a row. And I think the biggest offensive threat, of course, the Bills have faced in those 3 games has been the Bengals, with Joe Burrow, who's just as good a quarterback as he is. And you got $90 million worth of receivers there. Hey, there's certainly there's something to be said with the way the Bills defense responded in that second half, getting some stops. And now you're of the mind that we just did that with Cincinnati. And yes, we're going to be away this week, but this is New England. This is Drake May, not Joe Burrow. This is Stephon Diggs and Mac Hollins, not Jamar Chase or T. Higgins. I mean, it's a different story, guys. So I'm expecting the defense to actually look better as we go along here. And, we're getting Joey Bosa back, which should be a big help. But I think you'll see you're going to see some improvement from some other things going on the ends. TJ Sanders playing in sort of an edge sort of situation has been interesting. It's not really what he supposedly specializes in, but we'll see what that looks like. What was it like to be down in the field just after the Bills' victory? Very interesting. It was a little while. They have to get a lot of the stuff away from the sidelines, all the gear that was there, the benches and so forth. And then they actually had I think it was like in the east end of the field from about maybe the 30-yard line blocked off with guys standing across there so nobody could go try to dash toward the locker rooms. So we basically had like 70 yards of the field, and it was amazing. And it's kind of like you're trying to both, hey, I'm down on this field, and then hey, I'm down on this field where this just happened. And I think that was the cool part about it, sort of retracing Josh Allen's path on the 43-yard scramble, or even Benford's return of the interception, and even walking over into that area in that far corner, which would be the northwest sort of corner of the stadium, where Ty Johnson lost his footing on that first drive, and Bills end up taking the field goal there. So, and I think the other thing to mention, just, technically, there was still snow in those areas that, of course, you could see them throughout the game blowing off the numbers, blowing off the yard lines, blowing off the hash marks. It was kind of interesting to me how Josh Allen sort of used those hash mark blown off alleys for his dropbacks. And of course, he had to run around some, but he got a start in some of those areas. But guys, I got to tell you, where there was still snow there, it was it might have been light and fluffy first when it kind of falls, but when it gets down there and kind of sticks for a while, and it'd been there all day, that surface of it was kind of freezing. That there was a little bit of crust to it, and it definitely presented a real difference in how the surface felt, going from where it was actually blown off to on there. And I can see where defenders would have had a little bit of trouble reacting. So I think that was, part of it for the Bills on Sunday, just reacting to those receivers. And it is a little bit more difficult in the snow. I don't think, again, that's going to be the case here this weekend. But other than that, just being down there, I think what I marveled at most, other than the fact that, I'm here, this is hallowed ground, this is where so much history has happened on this field, and where we just saw history made in this very game that we were at. But again, just sort of taking it in and experiencing it, what struck me most about the field was how big it was and how small it was. And at the same time, it's kind of tough to explain, but just the whole scale of seeing the entire field, and it's really not that far. It's your 5 or 10 yards is not that much, but then I think the scale of the stadium is really what makes it so huge. And I think I caught that quite a bit when we were going down the stairs in the lower bowl after the game to get to the field. And at that sort of height, it just sort of reminded me of the high school stadium nearby here. And it's interesting, because it's just like you said in Hoosiers, go ahead and measure it. Yeah, it's 100 yards from goal line to goal line. It's 53 1/3 yards wide. And, it's the same, and they're the same everywhere. So that was kind of the interesting part about it. But it was a blast being down there. And I don't know if I'll be back in that stadium again or not. If it was going to be, it would be for the Jets game, but I'm not so sure that's going to happen. We even are having considerations of going and catching them in Cleveland, where ticket prices are quite reasonable for that game, amazingly. If we want to sit up, high in the stands in the MBTL, the Mistake by the Lake, which is that Brown Stadium, which is right on Lake Erie, right on the lake. And if the snow bands are coming across, right, it'll be, well, that'll be a spectacle there too. But I think going down in that field after the victory, though, that was, especially considering that these things had just happened there like an hour before or less. So it was pretty cool. We got some great pictures down there. Baltimore hasn't been the same since we beat them in week 1. In fact, most teams the Bills have lost to this season really haven't recovered from losing to them. You know, I thought that. And frankly, I have never trusted the emotional fortitude of the Ravens very well. I think we've seen that kind of play out at times where they have these playoff losses. They've had some to the Bills and, others. And just the emotional toughness, I guess. And when McDermott talks about toughness, that's what he's speaking of mostly, not just physical, but the emotional toughness. And yeah, I think the Bills damaged them that week. And I said this also in past shows. I believe the Eagles damaged the Chiefs in that Super Bowl last season. And we see sort of like longer term effects. Certainly that was the last game of the season for months and months. So the Chiefs, and they came out and lost 1 or lost 2 to start anyway. And then even though the Ravens had a couple of decent games after losing to the Bills, I think they went and ended up beating and putting 41 on Cleveland, the very same number they got beat by the Bills. But yeah, they were broken by that game, and I don't think they have recovered. And it's kind of interesting that you say that because I have that same feeling actually. I mean, most teams the Bills have beaten have been the same since losing to the Bills. I'm tired. It's been a long week watching my kids all day, every day. Hey, apologies. I'm the one that sat here for 17 minutes of show just doing. No apologies necessary. No, we didn't lose the audio. Do you think we could beat the Rams? Yeah, I think every team is beatable. I mean, listen, they just got beat by Carolina this past week. And I think it's a situation where, you can ask yourself, okay, would the Bills be favored against them in a Super Bowl, for example, or some of these other matchups? And you can ask all those questions, but then there's the other question you can ask. And when it's this time of year and it comes up to playoff matchups or even matchups to end this season, I mean, who the fuck do you not want to play against? Josh Allen. I mean, can there be any stronger notion than that? I mean, you'd rather go play against any quarterback besides Josh Allen right now in this NFL. So I think the Bills have that going for them. Slags, yeah, they played terrible in Houston and still had a shot at the end. And I still say that the Miami game was the heat. Again, the Bills struggle in that heat, just like the old Pats teams in Miami. And you're absolutely right about that. As good as the Patriots could be, the Brady Patriots we're talking about here with Belichick, the Dolphins had their number so often down there. And now the Dolphins are actually, like I said, coming on. The Dolphins might end up being a very good friend to the Bills if the Bills beat the Patriots and then the Dolphins manage to do so also. Paul Chandler again, Finns are the only team who really took us out behind the shed and put hands on us. Yeah, that's for sure. And the Bills just let that get away a little bit. And I just think that we have to realize that these teams are made of humans. They're not a static quantity. Things are changing. And certainly there's going to be lulls in the season. And I think you need to actually play the season like that and understand it and be expecting of them. To the thought of having your team on a razor's edge for every single Sunday, it's difficult to do. And some people will say, well, they should be able to do that. Look at all the money they're getting paid. It doesn't have a damn thing to do with the amount of money they're being paid. It's just difficult to get up that level all the time consistently. There has to be highs and lows because you wouldn't know what a high was if there was no such thing as a low. Who's our starting wide receivers? Well, that'll be interesting. I mean, you'll see definitely Gabe Davis is going to be out there. We don't know about Keon Coleman. Brandon Cooks will certainly be out there. Khalil Shakir will certainly be out there. Tyrell Shavers will definitely be out there. And I don't think Harbin is available to us yet. And I saw a prediction that Keon was going to be a healthy scratch again. I'm not so sure about that, but I think the receiver core will be they're going to be looking at receivers that could actually block this week. Receiver blocking will be a big thing and enabling the Bills to get this running game going, especially if you can get on top of these big, long corners that the Patriots have. Woke's joke with a statement here. I have a background in urban planning. A hotel casino where the existing Ralph is would be economic impact genius. I'm not supporting gambling, but with Royal Canadian, with our Canadian and out-of-town fans, Royal Canadian, listen to me, it would be gold. And, and perhaps so. And they might have plans for that, but they're concentrating on getting this building done. It's purely a football facility, and that would be an idea, though, definitely, to stick something over there. Jason Bush, I can't find the article about Henderson being out. I'm 51, so my memory sucks. I'm older, and I understand. The Pats play Baltimore. Yes, the entire let me look at the schedule here because the entire AFC North played the AFC East. And I have to see when they actually did play them. Let's go to week 16 here. Yes, that's the Sunday night. New England will be at Baltimore. So, and look, there's a possibility too. Also, I mean, you've got some games that, frankly, it's like the luck of the draw. I mean, we've gone through the opponents that the Patriots have had during this winning streak, and of course, they get those three easier games because of their last place schedule. Those would have been the Raiders, the Titans, and the Giants. But those happen to fall into that sort of winning streak of theirs. And, of course, there are other games you have to play. And, you talk about playing, I think that might be their last four with Buffalo, the Ravens, and then the Dolphins, and then they're it must be at the Jets, then hosting the Dolphins the last game of the season, because we are going to have the Jets at the Ralph for the last game of the season. But yes, indeed, they do play Baltimore. That will be a week from Sunday night. Can y'all believe Josh is going to be a daddy? I think this is fueling his performance. I had not heard that. Congratulations to Josh. No, Josh's oldest kids are the Finns. That's funny. Well done. But Ellie Toms, thanks so much for that. That's interesting. I'll have to get more information on that. Steve, I'm happy you had the chance to get on the field, a moment you'll never forget after an incredible win. Yeah, it was really something. And I was there with my dear friend Bruce, who is, we've known each other since we were kids. Our mothers went to nursing school together. So we been friends all our life. And you know how guys are. Guys don't need to talk every week to remain friends. I mean, you could not talk to a guy for a couple of years, and then it's just like, hey, what's going on? But he approached me early in the season after he'd caught wind of the Ralph rant and asked me, about this is his last year of season's tickets. And he doesn't go to all the games. He used to split them with someone, and now is fortunately being the fact that this is the Bills, you were able to sell and get actually quite nice prices for those tickets he doesn't use. And you wouldn't believe the cost of the parking either. It's insane. I would not personally be able to afford the club seat accommodations that we had Sunday, but it was awesome. And then part of that package was he had the opportunity to go down and hit the field, and we even got to go live down there for as long as my phone lasted. And I'm happy to report that there was audio for all of that. I'm not going to get over to this audio thing tonight very quickly. Oh, and by the way, I love the Standing Buffalo helmet there, Boca's joke. Thank you, sir. I think the Patriots have a better run game than the Bengals. That's tough to say. Listen, Chase Brown of the Bengals had been doing very well running the ball. And actually, even Joe Marino of Lockdown Bills predicted that Chase Brown would have more than 100 yards and touches. The Bills limited him to about 62 yards. And I think Shaq Thompson has been a big difference with that. But again, when we were talking about the difference in the defense and the change in the teams, this is a different Bills defense than the Patriots saw before. And that's not all in a bad way. I mean, the defensive line, Deion Walker, he's progressed. These are rookies. Every rep they get is gold. But he's progressed well. TJ Sanders is back out there. Joey Bosa, Epinesa has been decent since he's been back from his concussion or neck issue or whatever it was there a few weeks ago. Javon Solomon hasn't seen the field quite as much. But then Shaq Thompson in for Terrell Bernard has been one of the huge changes. Then Christian Benford, and I think Benford's going to be okay to go on Sunday. That's my gut feeling. But Benford has come on tremendously since the early season. And again, it takes time to get this together. Teams develop over the season. It's not like they are like a printed sheet that's just going to be the same from game to game going on. This is why trying to say, comparing scores and trying to figure logic between, okay, this team beat that team. Well, if you have the situation of a math example where team A beat team B and team B beat team C, so that automatically means that team A would beat team C. And it's not the case. Definitely not the case. I feel like a blowout is in the making. The Patriots have been preparing for us for 3 weeks, and study long, study wrong. There's certainly some pressure on the Patriots in trying to win this division. There's a ton of hype in New England over this game. They are hyping the shit out of this game. And frankly, there's some pressure applied. And then there's more pressure with the fact that you're playing a division opponent for the second time and trying to sweep them. That's tough to do. Division games are just different animals. We know this. And then you've got, the probably the stalwart player on both Patriots offensive line and defensive line are both sitting on IR right now. It's a different situation. It's a different situation. So I think, and I think, the Bills, they get fueled up after they have wins like this past Sunday, they get into the December mode and getting ready for playoffs. Yeah, most definitely the Bills are going to be a very tough out for anybody for the rest of this season. Okay, let's continue here. I agree. Most difficult thing to keep doing in football or any sport is the motivation and being on the razor's edge all the time. That's where I hear about all the greats making up slights in their heads. Yeah, absolutely. And what can we say to that? Well, we say exactly this. Just win out, Buffalo. Donald Ohina, just win out, Buffalo. And that looks extremely possible. It looks quite possible. I think they're going to be up for this Patriots game for absolute sure. And then you've got Cleveland. Cleveland might be the game that actually could be the biggest trap of them all, if you can even say that the Bills have a trap game. And then, Philadelphia, second to the last game of the Ralph, the way they're playing, that team is busted. That team is broken also. Very, very strange how some of the stuff has gone. Always thought the best coaches were motivational experts for sure. That is definitely the case. We shouldn't have lost to Atlanta. That one hurts, but I like our chances. Yeah, the Atlanta loss is like mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. At least Atlanta, that maybe it's a little more justified when you saw them, have a 14-point comeback against the Buccaneers last night. I went to a Red Sox game a year ago. Parking was $50. Yeah, the parking for these games is like 200, 250 in some of those spots. It's quite a lot. When can Ed come back? We don't have any solid word on that right now, but the thought is that by the time the playoffs get here, we basically have 4 more games to play. We're right on top of the first of those 4, so that's really 3 weeks and a couple of days until the end of the season, and then there would be another week after that, so another 4 weeks, and I think there is a possibility that Ed is back out there. The one thing they could do is you can actually brace that arm to prevent flexion in a direction that would cause damage or cause stress to that injury site. And of course, you got to know that the rehab, he's been doing everything absolutely possible, but I think he will definitely actually be back for the Bills for the playoffs. So you'll notice that I actually have the title of this show, Bills at Patriots Pregame Show 1.0. Now, I did not make that edit during the show to infer that there's a 2.0 because of the audio issues that we had. That has nothing to do with that. I just think we're going to have some more information and some more to talk about. So I'm planning on being back around tomorrow evening, probably same bat time, same bat channel, and go over some more of this stuff, get some more questions answered and asked, and get a feeling and probably take a look at the league in a little bit wider lens in terms of where things are settling out, where we think the possibilities will go, sort of the doing our version of the playoff machine, and getting a feel for where the Bills are going to be. Keep on getting your comments in here. A loss this weekend doesn't really worry me. That might sound crazy, but I prefer we rest our injured players. Well, frankly, the Bills need to go 2-2 in order to essentially be assured of a wild card spot at 11-6. And they've got the 4 games to do it. Which 2 you think you can win? Boy, you'd like to get the 2 of them won right up front here with the Patriots and the Browns. And then, there's every possibility you go ahead and beat the Eagles. And the other thing is, of course, how will the league have developed by that point with other results to what winning or losing would do for the Bills? Hell, there's a notion that they, don't win the division, have a wild card spot, and are basically, resting against the Jets, although that would be kind of weird for the last game ever at the Ralph, but you'd rather it be that than something else, and you'd rather it be that than them having to fight to stay alive. They may well have to win that game, though, in order maybe to clinch the number one seed. That is what is so fascinating and exciting about this season. We have just no idea how this could work out. So, Pats win this one 31-27. May is too good to choke. Well, Kevin Wright in the house. Hey, that's a possibility. But I do think, May has had some turnover-worthy balls. I think I've seen some inaccuracy from him a little bit in spots where I've watched. I know he's been fairly accurate, though. And, I just believe that he's also taking longer to throw even than Josh. His time to throw is up well over 2.5. I think it's about 2.74 seconds, and Allen's about 2.67. But Allen, of course, is based on some of the scrambles he does that can extend plays so long. That's what drives that average up. May isn't doing that as much, and I think the Bills are going to get some pressure on him. And I believe that you got a situation that defense of the Patriots won't be the same. You've got basically no Milton Williams, who was there last time. Robert Spillane has an injury that just came up that could hamper him quite a bit on Sunday. He's their great linebacker. And then Harold Landry, the third, has been dealing with a knee for a couple of weeks, and they had him as a full participant at practice, but that may have been even a walkthrough on Friday. So there's questions about him. So you've got questions. Well, essentially, Milton Williams isn't a question, but as it were, questions about three starting members of that Patriots defense. And I think the Bills are going to have themselves a good defensive game or offensive game. And I think if they can run the ball like they want and control this game, it's just going to set up a lot differently than it did last time. Just went out, Buffalo. Go Bills. I'm more confused about why the Falcons aren't better than they are. They looked awesome versus the Bills. Stud athletes all over the field. I remember watching, thinking, wow, did they just outplay Buffalo? Well, they did. It was sort of their Super Bowl. And look, the Falcons were supposed to be very promising this year. They made a lot of investments, but the team just makes a lot of mistakes. They were making a lot of mistakes last night. All the penalties they had ridiculous penalties that hampered them. I think they had 11 in the first half alone. And that had to piss Todd Bowles off even more, the Buccaneers coach, because with all those mistakes, and he still let them get away with that 1-point win. But the Bills, they have their lulls, and we'll see. I think they're in a position though to go ahead and win out here. I knew a Patriots fan was lurking. They really think we give a shit about them. No, we don't. We felt sorry for you. Nah, never mind. We didn't. But those years when you were sucking, and just so you know, the Bills never sucked that much during the entire drought as the Patriots managed to start sucking after Tom Brady left. Just saying. Block all Patriots fans. Well, the Ralph Rant is not big enough to be throwing listeners out, but we will certainly identify them if they're bringing this sort of stuff up. And we had about an hour and 40-minute show, even though it's an hour and 56, because there was so much time where it was silent. And I want to apologize for that. And I definitely will be coming back again tomorrow with a cleanup and talking about some more things. The thumbnail will be the same. It's just going to say 2.0, and that will save me time to make sure that the audio is just perfect when we get into it. But We're in 2 hours here, and here's a good question. We'll get this in. Any thoughts on Josh taking a pay cut to help get a wide receiver one? Adjustments or whatever. Brady was a lot of things. Tom Brady was a lot of things, but one thing he never was the highest paid quarterback in the league. And he definitely did that. He allowed them to have some capital to work with, and I would be surprised if that wouldn't be the case. The only worry is that you don't want to have that turn into hard feelings if it's not used effectively. And that's where then, is he telling Bean who he wants? And hopefully it's not another, Keon Coleman type of situation. Listen, if the Bills want to go and get and target a receiver and put everything out to get that receiver, I don't know if he's coming out after this season, but Ohio State's Jeremiah Smith. That's the dude. That's definitely the dude. We got a Go Bills from Paul Chandler twice. That ought to ensure the win, I'm certain. Great show. Have a good night, Steve and company. Go Bills. Thanks, Schlegs. Yeah, we're going to get out of here now. He should take a pay cut. Been saying it for a while. Well, we're going to take a show cut and get out of here now. And so I can put this show behind me where we had the audio difficulties. Again, apologies for that. Guys, thanks for hanging out. Very much appreciated and suffering through that. And hope you had some laughs at my expense on it. That's all well and good. That's how it should be. And Justin Jefferson. Yeah. Well, it worked last time we got a receiver from Minnesota. Woke his joke with another thanks, Ralph. Have a great show as always. Don't forget the defensive side of the ball. Well, absolutely. But I think the Bills have got some. I'm looking forward to the Bills defense next season. They're definitely going to have less of a situation with injuries. I mean, sometimes it's dice rolls, and it's been awful this season, and it's been awful for a couple seasons. But at some point, that has to ease off. Just like same thing with the Chiefs having won 12 one-score games last season, and they haven't won a single one this season. That is how it goes. But we're going to get out of here now. Thanks so much for listening when it was possible to listen. I appreciate you being here. Certainly, if you're new to the channel or if you're one of the new subscribers, thanks for already subscribing. If you are new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe. We don't normally have those sorts of audio problems. Yes, I'm going to stop talking about it. But we do normally have a great time here. I will be back for a pregame tomorrow and then a postgame show, which will be scheduled for somewhere around 6:30 or 7:30 p.m., maybe 8 p.m., maybe just before the Sunday night game. And then don't know how long we'll go there because, of course, everybody's interested in those games. But I will get you a post-game situation going here. So with that, thanks again for being here. And as always, be good, do good, God bless, and go Bills. I am the Ralph. This is the Ralph Rant. We are out. Good night.